Yeah, hello and welcome to the session XP200 Best Practices for SAP BTP Operations. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Niklas, and together with me today is my colleague Christian.
Yeah, I'm Christian Loos, and we are both part of the SAP BTP product management team.
Yeah, so we have a couple of interesting topics together with us in our bags, so I will quickly jump over our agenda. So first we start with the responsibility model for BTP, then we continue with a small overview of tools for operations, and then we give you some recommendations and a small demo on how to structure the BTP accounts, a little bit of automation topics when it comes to setting up the accounts. Costs and usage is also very important, so also an overview of that. And to close the session, we have the topic of observability. So let me start with the shared responsibility model. So in the on-premise world, you have your SAP administrators team, which is responsible for setting up the infrastructure, installing operation systems, and then in the end, of course, also installing the SAP systems and configuring them accordingly. When you have a cloud solution like SAP BTP, which is a platform as a service offering, a lot of these tasks are managed by the vendor, in this case, SAP. So we are responsible for the data centers, for the infrastructure, for the network, for the operating systems, and for the overall configuration of the platform. And of course, we offer the services on top of the provided platform, which you as a customer consume that. For all which is belonging to these services, you as a customer are responsible. So when you want to create a service instance, for example, or you want to configure this service, or if you want to make, for example, a side-by-side extension to keeping your core clean, this is all in your responsibility, in the responsibility of the administration team. So maybe this is the old SAP Basis team. Maybe this is also a differentiation between the administrators team and developers. This is up to your model in your company. When you start with SAP BTP, you get an empty BTP global account and nothing is configured in there. So you need to set up everything what you need. And the first tool which you use in this is the BTP cockpit. So as an administrator, you log onto the cockpit and you, for example, start to create sub-accounts, give authorizations to users, and so on and so forth. So this is, I would say, the main tool for all administrative tasks. But then we also have some service-specific tools. So for example, we have services like HANA Cloud or the integration suite or build code, where you might need to configure some additional things. And then you have some additional administration tools. For example, in HANA Cloud, this would be the HANA Cloud cockpit then. But this is just an extract and the most important tools. When you then think about, okay, in companies, we have very extensive landscapes of SAP solutions, non-SAP solutions, and then, of course, also a very extensive use of BTP to keeping the core clean. It is higher workload to create all these assets and structures. And you may want to automate this. And you have two options to do this. So you have on the one hand side, the so-called Terraform. We will come to that a little bit later again. And then you also have the choice to use the command line interfaces we are publishing. So we have one for BTP, where you can create your own scripts. And the CLI is able to, for example, create accounts, assign authorizations. But then we also have two more command line tools in relation to BTP. The first one is the Cloud Foundry command line tool, and the second one is the Kube Control from Kubernetes, which is below our Kima environment. So this is all about the setting up and the life cycle of the platform. But maybe you also want to have a central monitoring solution for the observability concept. For this, you can use SAP Cloud ALM, and we will come to that later again too. So this is not part of BTP, but it can be used in combination with BTP. And then you maybe also have some support topics. So for example, you need to create an incident if you face some issues, or you want to see the availability of your cloud solutions. Then SAP for me is the right choice for you. Last but not least, nowadays all companies are going through the business transformation to getting cloud ready and improve the business processes. And along that, you also want to document your enterprise architectures because, as already said, they get very extensive with a lot of different solutions. And you can make use of SAP LeanIX to document your architectures. Yeah, and that is the first overview. So I give the word to Christian to show us the BTP in the cockpit and the recommendations how to set it all up.
Yeah, so you mentioned one of the most important things when it comes to BTP operations is to set up your account structure. And you do this in the BTP cockpit. You start from a global account. If you have multiple contracts with BTP services contained, you might also have multiple global accounts. If you have a new contract, the default administrator will be the person who is mentioned in the contract as the IT contact person. But the first thing you should do on the global account also is to configure additional administrators, right? And this can be individual users, it can be also a user group, but it's important to have multiple people who can do administrative tasks in the global account. You can also configure either full access or read-only access for individual users. Then below the global account, you can create sub-accounts. And sub-accounts is where actually consumption of services happens, where you develop applications, where you deploy applications. And here, it's recommended to follow a tiered landscape approach so that you clearly separate between accounts for development, accounts for testing, and accounts for production. Right? And you also want to control who has access to those sub-accounts. You can also do this in the user configuration. Similar to the global account, you can configure who is administrator, who can deploy applications, and who has, let's say, read-only access. You might also want to define a naming pattern for these sub-accounts to keep an overview. So, for instance, create different sub-accounts for different departments, for different teams, for different projects, depending on your needs. And to also give a common naming structure for what is a dev account and what is a production account. Now, once this landscape grows, right, and you get more and more accounts under your global account, this becomes harder to manage. And for that, we offer the possibility to group multiple sub-accounts in a directory. And on the directory can also define, again, administrators who can then manage the users and can create further sub-accounts within the directory. So you can delegate basically control, authority from the global account to the respective teams and units managing a directory and the different sub-accounts so that the global team who is managing the overall BTP account does not become a bottleneck. One important element of administrating accounts is also to provide entitlements. Entitlements are needed that you can actually consume services, right? that you can use them, that you can create a service instance, that you can create a subscription. And entitlements therefore control also what can be done within a certain directory or within a certain sub-account. You can get on a global account an overview on what entitlements you have, so what services you can potentially use, right? And these depend, of course, on the contract or multiple contracts that you have assigned to this global account. And then via the the menu item entity assignments, you can then assign entitlements to individual sub-accounts or directories. On the directory level, you first have to enable this entitlement management so that the directory administrator can then further assign entitlements within the directory. We want to show this. So here, enable entitlement management, and you can also enable user management on the directory level. Right? And this, again, helps to delegate control to local teams and users. The last thing I want to show is the use of labels. Yeah? So on directory level, but also on sub-account level, you can assign labels. And you can pick and choose name-value pairs here. Right? So you can, for instance, define cost center numbers or owners or teams or whatever you wish. Right? And this also helps to get more information on the accounts that you have and help you manage them. So now, if I have a complex landscape, right, which I have to maintain, and I want to make changes or create new accounts, this can become quite a lot of manual work, right, if everything has to be done through the BTP cockpit. But we also have some automation capabilities, right, Niklas?
Exactly. So Yeah, I know for sure that it took you some time to create this demo account because you've done it in a manual way. But if you want to make it in a more standardized way and automated fashion, you can make use of the Terraform provider for SAP BTP. So Terraform is an industry standard tool for so-called infrastructure as a code. So you make some configuration files, how to set up a landscape, and then you just execute a small tool. This tool is reading this configuration file, and everything is created by this tool. So this enables you to have a more governed environment when dealing with BTP and also non-BTP, because Terraform has also quite a lot of providers for non-SAP solutions. So you have a full picture for your whole landscape in the end. So Terraform enables you that you can manage your global accounts, your directories, the sub-accounts, just as Christian explained. You need to manage the entitlements to use BTP. You can also do this with Terraform. You can assign authorizations. Of course, this is also a topic. And then some other small things, like, for example, there's the possibility to detect changes. So it's recommended when you use Terraform, just make changes with Terraform and not in a manual fashion anymore. And maybe someone makes a change in some day, and then Terraform detects this. And then you can decide if you want to keep the changes, then you need to adjust Terraform configuration, or if Terraform should ignore the changes and create everything back to the original state. Another good thing is you have the community of Terraform. So it's not a custom written command line script which you make. So it's really a industry standard adopted tool. And you can execute multiple Terraform configurations at the same time. So not just one script at one time, you can have multiple ones. And if there is a point in time where you decide, okay, I have a use case, maybe a side-by-side extensions I coded years ago, and this is not used anymore in my company, I don't need to delete everything which is belonging to this side-by-side extension on a manual way. I can just say Terraform destroy, and everything is deleted by the Terraform. If you want to get more insights into Terraform and get a first expression and maybe try out yourself, I can highly recommend that you check out the Jumpstart session XP200, because our colleagues Christian and Rui will give a more detailed overview on that. I have a very small demo video with me, how this Terraform looks like. So you define a Terraform configuration file. So as seen, you define, for example, the name of a SAP account, and then you define further things like the entitlements and then the services you want to create. And then when your configuration is final, you say Terraform apply, and then Terraform is starting reading the configuration, creating all the artifacts, and then at some point in time it's finished. So let's have a look how it looked like in the cockpit. So we see the SAP account is created as planned, as defined in the config. And if we now look into our service instances, there's also now the SAP Build Workzone instance as defined in our Terraform configuration file. So with this, you have a very good option to automate your management of your system landscapes in BTP. But we also have some other important topics. So of course, when we have such diverse landscapes, it is important to also think about cost and Christian.
Absolutely, and especially in consumption-based contracts, right? Commercial models. Basically, you pay what you use, right? And if you have to manage a complex landscape, you also should keep an eye on the usage and therefore the cost that this usage is incurring. And for that, also in the BTP cockpit, we have functionality called usage and cost, right? And here, for instance, you can see the percentage of the credits that you have used in the current month already. You can also see what is the trend over the last few months, right? How much credits you have used in the past. You can also see what services have been consumed overall, right? And also the amount, the list based on the list price of these services. You can also drill down into individual sub-accounts or directories, right, and see what has been consumed within this sub-account. And also on each service, you can see basically a trend line over the last few months, how the usage has developed, right? So it's important to keep an eye on this, to regularly check this, or even better, set up automatic alerting. We have an API where you can extract this data out of the cockpit, right, and then build your own notification system based on this, right, or connect it to a dashboard solution, right, to visualize the data. Now, if you offer the BTP internally within your organization, basically as a service provider, and have multiple teams using it. Often the question comes up, how can I distribute the cost? Right? That overall is booked to my global account. How can I distribute this to different departments, or to different internal consumers, internal customers? And here we also have functionality in the BTP cockpit, which helps you do this. So all services which are used within a certain sub-account, you can get the cost distribution on a sub-account level, on a directory level. If you use labels, as I explained earlier, right, for instance, to identify what sub-accounts belong to a certain consumer, you can also group the cost by these labels, right, and therefore, let's say, by a cost center. So that's a great way to do it. However, there are some services which are not bound to one specific sub-account, right? They have a more like central or shared nature. For instance, integration suite, you would have a central integration suite landscape, or also HANA Cloud you might share across different sub-accounts. And here you can either go for a fixed metric, fixed rate per user or per application, or if you really want to have a fine granular metering, implement an own solution, for instance, using API management, measuring the actual usage utilization, or go via other tools. So there it's a bit more complicated if you want to really drill down on the initial usage pattern. Besides the cost, of course, you also want to keep an eye on the health and the availability and the performance of your applications on the BTP and your scenarios, and especially in the more heterogeneous landscape, right, when you not only have BTP extensions or integration scenarios, but also other SAP applications in the cloud, which are integrated, right, to solve an end-to-end business problem. You need basically this holistic monitoring, right, or observability. And it's, again, about monitoring the health of the solution, but also the performance, right, managing integration points between different systems, and all of this in an end-to-end landscape. And for that, we have SAP Cloud ALM, as previously also mentioned, in the context of BTP, to collect data from the BTP services and the applications running on the BTP, and using aggregating the data, right, to identify problems really early on, right? So, for instance, if there's declining performance on a Cloud Foundry application, you can spot this through central monitoring and raise an alert for an expert to investigate. For the investigation and the problem resolution itself, you would use the local tools in the BTP. So, for instance, analyze the logs for that application. You can also there do automation, right? So, for instance, if you see that frequently you need more resources, you can scale up resources, for instance, automatically through the automation pilot. So, also there's lots of opportunities to automate, right, and to reduce vendor efforts. Cloud ALM also solves or addresses different domains. So I mentioned already performance or availability, but also has a lot of integration or also process monitoring, for instance, for process automation or for integration suite. So you can look at different problem domains, right, and use the central functionality, not just for BTP applications and scenarios, but as I said, also for other SAP solutions. So Cloud ALM is basically a single source of truth for monitoring, alerting, and analysis. And a lot of BTP scenarios are already supported in Cloud ALM, but there's more to come on the roadmap. And if you want to know more details, you can definitely check out the roadmap explorer to see what is coming in the future. So with that, we have covered a lot of, we have looked into a lot of aspects, right, of BTP operations. Obviously, there's much more. Not only in the TechEd session and TechEd session catalog, but we also have great learning content and also part of the guidance framework, the best practice framework, right? And also something new we have recently launched.
Yes, exactly. So, of course, check out all the remaining TechEd sessions today. But we have good news. So last week, right before TechEd, we also launched a new learning journey on learning.sap.com, which is called Administrating SAP Business Technology Platform. So go check it out and make sure, if you learn in this learning journey, also to give us some feedback that we can improve this material for you. And with that, I would say we can start the Q&A. All right, so we have some interesting questions over here. So the first one is, can we assign already created sub-accounts into a newly created directory?
Yes, for sure, you can rearrange the sub-accounts into directories. Right, you do this also through the BTP cockpit, and you can move basically a sub-account into a directory through the BTP cockpit, through the Account Explorer.
All right. So then the next question is, do I need to pay for an additional license to use Terraform?
So Terraform is a third-party tool. Yeah? We have published a Terraform provider to use with Terraform. So again, Terraform you acquire outside of BTP. It's not part of the BTP scope itself, but the Terraform provider is free of charge. Right? So you can use it in combination with your BTP account, even with a trial account.
Exactly. So then we have another question, which is around costs. So are there any APIs that allow you to monitor credit consumption by services? Would be useful to monitor multiple accounts and be able to manage the notifications?
Yeah, so as I said, you can get the data that is shown in the cockpit, in the usage analysis view, also through an API. You can also, I believe, get the cost per sub-account through the API. And then analyze it further, right, or represent it in the dashboard. So yeah, that's possible. Either also through an Excel spreadsheet export, right? So that's also one way to do it.
Yeah. So we have another one about Calm. So can data collected in SAP Cloud ALM be accessed, exposed by other observability tools?
Yes. So Cloud ALM also offers public APIs. Yeah. So you can go to the Business Accelerator Hub, where we publish all APIs, not just for Cloud ALM, but also for other SAP Cloud applications, also for the BTP services. There, search for the Cloud ALM APIs, and there you will find all the APIs that are available. One API as well is about incidents, right? So if there's incidents on the BTP, downtime events or maintenance events, you can also retrieve those through the API and then also use them in your own notification infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. So then the next one is about the cockpit. So is SAP BTP cockpit only for SAP bases, or who should have access? Developers, functional consultants?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And of course, it's for administrators first of all, right, to set up the account structure, to manage accounts, and so on. And I've shown earlier this option to delegate authority, right, administration rights to individual teams via directories or sub-accounts, right, and therefore take load off the central team, of the basis team, basically, to push it down, the responsibility to the individual development teams. Right, and that's what we also recommend, because otherwise this becomes a bottleneck, right, and there's a lot of overhead process involved. So you can, for instance, assign users from a development team, right, consultants as well, right, also functional consultants, the authority to manage a sub-account on their own, right, and also manage entitlements within that sub-account. But make sure basically they do not have access to everything, right? So you would still want to have some control in the global account, who can use what services in what sub-account, who is the administrator there, who is responsible, right? So to have some governance still overall and not, create too much. Still maintain some level of control centrally.
All right, so we have a very short question to close it. So is it possible to have read-only role in the BTP cockpit?
Yes, so there's both for the global account administration and for the sub-accounts, you can either provide full access, or where you can create entities or create entitlements, create service instances, but you can also have view-only rights, for instance, to just show the usage, right, and analyze this, for instance, as in a controlling role, right, or in a financial role. So that's possible, yes.
All right. So then thanks for watching our session, and
thank you very much. Enjoyed.